What does Charles think of the view that the First and Second World Wars and the various European conflicts in between are better understood as chapters in a larger, overarching war that ended the old war and gave birth to the new? Did these collective bloodbaths shake faith in God and affect subsequent events in the church?
Yes, on both counts. Just as I think that the English Reformation, the English Civil War, Wars of the Three Kingdoms, the Jacobite Wars, the American Revolution, the American Civil War are better seen, they're better understood in context as a series of related conflicts. So too with the two world wars and their adjoining murders, the Balkan Wars, the Korean War, the Chinese Civil War, the Russian Civil War. All these are all connected. And really, they represented the transformation of semi-Christian Europe into the bordello that we have, the threatened bordello that we have now. The mortally threatened bordello.
Okay. Walk us through how a war can change a culture in a society in this way.
Well, it does several things. Firstly, if you're on the losing end, it can destroy the society's faith in itself, self-confidence, its attachment to religion. You know, there's always the question, how could God let such terrible things happen?
Of course.
That's, you know, my answer to that is always the way He's let me get away with my sins. But anyway, that was Benedict XVI's thing in Warsaw when people demanded of him, you know, why was the church silent under the Nazis? Which was not true anyway.
Right.
But rather than arguing that, he said, why was God silent? Ask yourself that.
Ooh.
What did you do that God did not speak? So, it can destroy regular morality. The sexes are thrown together in, shall we say, unorthodox ways. My father always said that World War II had done huge damage to American society, partly by ensuring that a whole generation was raised during a critical period without fathers.
But the wars launched us as a superpower.
Yeah, well, I made a similar comment to Dad, and he looked at me like I was an idiot. He said, son, you survive a war the way you survive an earthquake.
Yeah, wow.
And, you know, women were thrown into the workplace, they were thrown into the armed forces. Our whole notion of femininity and of masculinity got smacked around.
Because moms were acting as dads, too? There was no dads?
You know, and also because they had to go to work. Rosie the Riveter.
Oh, okay.
That wasn't done.
Oh.
You know, it began the destruction of gender distinctions. Women rarely wore slacks before World War II. It sometimes, rarely. The men never wore dresses. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, they didn't even have gender reassignment before World War II. It was terrible.
Wow, really?
Yeah, I know. But so you had the disruption of war. Does all sorts of terrible things, and especially the kind of war that was fought in World War II on both sides, with bombing of populations. With the on the German side, their racial issues and their attempts to eliminate large portions of other peoples. The whole thing was just horrific. And it as to the effect that it had on the Council Fathers, I believe that it had a huge effect on the Fathers of Vatican II, because to a great degree it damaged, or it didn't destroy, their belief in the Catholic cultural ethos. How could this horror have come out of that if the Catholic cultural ethos was so great?
Oh, I see. So they called them to question tradition almost. How could this horror come out of tradition?
Meanwhile, at the same time, the great savior of the United States, we're not a Catholic country. We were, at that time, what Pope Benedict XVI later would call a confessionally neutral country, nevertheless illuminated by gospel values. And
Sounds right. That sounds right.
Well, it was true then.
Yeah, true then.
It's not true now.
Yeah, of course.
And see, though this was a major, though understandable mistake on the part of the Council Fathers. Because at the time, I mean, think back to the syllabus of errors, which we discussed.
Right.
All right. Blessed Pius IX taught that a confessionally neutral state would inevitably degenerate into an anti-Catholic despotism.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you look at the United States in 1960, and nothing could appear to be further from the truth.
Yeah.
Moreover, that being the case, Anglo-American liberalism must be something quite different from European and Latin American anti-Catholic liberalism. Now, with 20/20 hindsight, 50 plus years later, we can look back and say they were wrong.
Yeah.
But it was a very alluring thing then. And also don't forget that people were talking in terms of freedom and liberty, getting away from the old rules, the old values. And remember that for a lot of people, those old rules and old values, what had they brought except the horrors of World Wars I and II? So you had all this stuff going on at once. And then you had the aftermath of Vatican II was sort of a French Revolution in the church. And everything was up for grabs. Nothing seemed stable. The liturgy, of course, was the most obvious thing, and that was just totally changed into something completely different. And so it's important to remember that while you can say, well, theoretically it shouldn't have to be that way, well, maybe not, but the truth of the matter is that for the vast majority of Catholics around the world, their biggest reconnection with their faith and their identity is that Sunday Mass. So that thing will determine, in many, many different ways, their concept of Catholicity. Screw with that, and you are begging for bad results. Well, they did screw with it, and they got bad results. Anyway, truthfully, the reason why Father John Courtney Murray, S.J., was able to affect Vatican II's teaching on church and state, for example, is because he was basically pushing the American example as better than the church's traditional idea of the Catholic confessional state. And again, in 1963, you could make a case for it. You can't now. You really can't unless you think infanticide is a good thing. That really, although this isn't the question, if you wanted to see a single moment where the United States abandoned what she had been, that confessionally neutral state, nevertheless illumined by gospel values, you could point to several things, but probably the most decisive and obvious was Roe v. Wade. Once the Supreme Court were able to redefine what is life, what is human, we were off to the races, and we have been going down that road ever since.